After I paid $1,800 to fix her car, she texted, "I only see you as a friend." I said, "Okay." Then I demanded my money back and watched her lose her mind. Sup Reddit. You ever spend $1,845 fixing a girl's car because she called you crying at 5 in the morning? No? Just me? Cool. Because I did that. Drove across Fargo in the dark, swiped my entire tool upgrade fund at a mechanic shop, and walked out grinning like I'd just closed some kind of deal. 1 hour later, she texted me, "Let's just be friends." I hadn't even left the parking lot. Let me back up. I'm Paul, 28M, and I work as a field service technician for a logistics company that installs and maintains automated warehouse systems, conveyors, barcode scanners, PLC controls, the whole nine. I drive a company truck loaded with tools, and I'm on call every other week, so my phone going off at weird hours isn't unusual. When it buzzed at 5 o'clock on a Wednesday morning in late October, I didn't even flinch, just grabbed it off the nightstand and squinted at the screen. It was Fiona, and she was losing it. Between the crying and the hyperventilating, I got the gist. Her 2016 Volkswagen Jetta, the manual transmission she was so proud of because nobody drives stick anymore, had died in her apartment parking lot. She'd gone out to warm it up for an early errand, and the clutch pedal went straight to the floor. No resistance, no engagement, just dead. And she had a job interview the next morning in Minneapolis, an in-person final round at some hospitality management company she'd been chasing for months. The kind of interview you don't reschedule, nobody's paying your gas to get there, and if you no-show, they move on to the next person without blinking. She was panicking, full meltdown, and when Fiona panicked, she called me. That was the arrangement, apparently. Before I tell you what happened next, you need the context, because without the 6 months leading up to this call, I just sound like an idiot with a debit card. Which, fair, I kind of was. I met Fiona at a housewarming party in April. She was 25, worked as an office coordinator at a property management company, and she had this way of making you feel like the only person in the room. When I told her I worked on automated warehouse systems, she didn't do the usual polite nod and subject change. She asked what the coolest malfunction I'd ever diagnosed was. I told her about the time a rogue barcode scanner was sending phantom reads that crashed an entire sortation line, and she laughed and said, "So you're basically a robot doctor?" I was done for. That was it. We started texting that same night. By the end of the first week, we were talking every day. Good morning texts that turned into running conversations that didn't stop until one of us fell asleep. It felt real. It felt like it was headed somewhere obvious. The hanging out started casual, group stuff first, then one-on-one things that felt exactly like dates, but nobody ever called them that. She'd hug me goodbye and hold it a beat too long. Every signal you could possibly read as interest she was sending. All green lights. All the time. Then the favors crept in. Started small. Her bathroom faucet was dripping. Could I take a look? Took me 20 minutes. She stood in the doorway the whole time asking me questions about my job, laughing at my stories, handing me paper towels when I needed them. When I finished, she put her hand on my arm and said, "Seriously, what would I do without you?" That felt like something. That felt like progress. Then it was furniture. Twice. Then an entire Saturday mounting a TV, assembling a bookshelf, and programming her thermostat, because she said the apartment was impossible to figure out. I drove to her place on a Sunday morning in August and changed her oil in the parking lot while she watched from her window. She came down when I was done, brought me a glass of water, and told me I was such a good guy. Every single favor came with a compliment chaser. "You're so good at this. I don't know what I'd do without you. You're literally the only person I trust with this stuff." And I ate it up every single time. But every time I tried to move things forward, she'd slide sideways. Not reject. Redirect. "I love hanging out with you. Let's not overthink it." Or, "I just got out of something and I'm not ready to label anything." Or the all-time classic, "Why can't I find a guy like you, Paul?" Like me. Not me. 5 months in. I'd had a brutal day. 11 hours on my feet troubleshooting a faulty servo drive in a warehouse that was about 40 degrees. I texted Fiona around 9 p.m. "Rough one today. You free to grab food? Could use some company." She replied, "Aw, that sucks. I'm actually heading out with some girlfriends tonight. Rain check?" No rain check ever came. But 3 days later, when her kitchen faucet started dripping at midnight, guess whose phone rang? I once added up the money I'd spent on Fiona in a notes app. Before the clutch job, I was already in for over $600. Gas, parts, food I'd brought over, a set of wiper blades I'd replaced without being asked. She'd never bought me so much as a cup of coffee. My buddy Joe, who works on the same field service team, had been watching this play out for months. One night, after a long shift, sitting in his truck splitting a gas station burrito, he looked at me and said, "Brother, you're not her boyfriend. You're her IT department with feelings. I didn't have an answer for that. Change the subject, but I thought about what he said for a long time. So, the call, 5 a.m., October. I was already pulling on my boots before she finished explaining. Told her to get the car towed to Knutson's. I'd meet them there. Got there at 6:45, talked to Gary, the owner, before anyone else showed up. Told him it was urgent, needed a same-day turnaround if possible. Gary looked at the Jetta for about 15 minutes, came back, and confirmed what I already suspected. Clutch assembly was gone. Pressure plate, disc, throwout bearing, the whole package. On a 2016 Jetta with a manual trans, parts and labor, he quoted me $1,845. Here's where I wasn't a complete idiot. Before I handed over my card, I texted Fiona. Gary says full clutch replacement, $1,845 parts and labor. I can cover it up front, but I need you to pay me back. We can figure out a plan. You good with that? Her reply came in under 30 seconds. Yes, absolutely. I will pay you back every cent, I promise. You are saving my life right now, Paul. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I screenshotted that. Then I handed Gary my card and authorized the full amount. The charge hit my bank at 7:23 a.m. Told Fiona the car would be ready by 3 p.m. and she'd have plenty of time for the drive to Minneapolis. Her response, I literally cannot believe you. You are the most amazing person I have ever met. I don't deserve you. I sat in my truck in Knutson's parking lot with the heat blasting, October in Fargo already bitter enough to see your breath, and I felt like the man. I'd been saving that tool fund for 8 months. I'd known Fiona for 6. Both accounts just went to zero in the same morning, but it didn't matter. This was the moment. She was going to see me differently after this. I was sure of it. At 8:31 a.m., 68 minutes after the charge went through, while I was still sitting in my truck finishing a gas station coffee, my phone buzzed. Hey, can we talk about something? I've been thinking a lot and I really need to be honest with you. My stomach dropped. The 3 dots bounced for what felt like a week. You are genuinely one of the best people I know. Like seriously top of the list. And I care about you so much, but I think we work better as friends. I don't want to lead you on or make things weird. Our friendship means too much to me. I read it 3 times. Looked at the bank charge notification still on my screen. 68 minutes. I'd spent more time waiting for Gary's quote than she'd spent between, you are saving my life, and, let's just be friends. She'd probably had that message drafted before I even swiped my card, just waiting for the payment to go through before she hit send. Old Paul would have typed a novel, would have laid out every signal, every late-night call, every time she leaned into me and made me feel like something more than a guy with a truck and a tool bag. Instead, I typed, appreciate you being upfront. Good luck at the interview tomorrow. Hit send. Muted her notifications. Sat in that parking lot for another 10 minutes, staring at ice crystals forming on my windshield. Fiona picked the car up that afternoon. Gary texted me when it was done, and I forwarded her the receipt with the big red paid stamp. She sent back a heart emoji. That was it. No mention of the just friends text. No mention of the money. Just a heart emoji for an $1,845 favor. She wanted a friend. Cool. She was about to find out what friendship looks like when the friend stops being useful. I pulled back hard. 1-word replies. Declined every invitation. She texted the day after the interview. I killed it. They basically said I'm their top candidate. I owe this all to you. I waited 4 hours and replied, nice, congrats. She tried again that weekend. Miss you. Want to come over and watch a movie? I'll order food. I typed back, can't. Busy this weekend. I wasn't busy. I was sitting in my apartment eating cereal and watching YouTube videos about small claims court procedures in North Dakota. But she didn't need to know that. A full week of 1-word answers, and she went from warm to confused to slightly irritated. You've been super distant lately. Did I do something? I kept it simple. Nah, just been slammed with work. Then 2 days later, I feel like something changed between us, and I don't know what happened. She knew exactly what happened. She just didn't think there'd be consequences for it. When she texted asking if I could come look at her baseboard heater because it was making a weird sound, I replied, that's a landlord issue. Put in a maintenance request. She left me on red for 2 days. First time in 6 months I'd said no to her about anything. Funny how quick the friendship dried up once the free labor stopped. I picked up a weekend side job calibrating sensors for a food processing plant outside town. The extra cash went straight into rebuilding the fund. Started hitting the gym again 5 days a week. Morning sessions before work. Funny how much free time you have when you're not driving across town at midnight to fix someone's faucet. Joe and I started a Wednesday night routine. Wings and pool at a spot near the warehouse. Normal stuff. The kind of life I'd been putting on hold because I was too busy being someone's free handyman with a crush. About 3 weeks after the friend text, I'm at Walmart picking up groceries, turning past the cereal aisle, and I almost walked straight into this dude who looked vaguely familiar. He stopped, looked at me. Wait, are you Fiona's friend, Paul? His name was Tyler, Fiona's ex. They dated for about 4 months earlier that year, ending right before I met her at the housewarming. We talked for a few minutes, then dropped this. Tyler said Fiona had run the exact same playbook on him, had him install a ceiling fan, set up a home office, co-sign on a furniture rental agreement. He'd spent close to $1,000 on things she'd asked for. Then one day she told him she wasn't feeling a romantic connection and wanted to be friends. When he pulled back, she told their mutual group he was emotionally unstable and couldn't handle rejection. I didn't figure it out until months later when a buddy showed me texts she'd sent about me, Tyler said. She told people I was obsessive. I lost 2 friendships over it because people believed her. She does this thing where she cries to one person and they tell 3 more, and by the end of the week, you're the villain without ever knowing there was a trial. He wasn't describing a different story. He was describing mine. 6 months ahead of schedule. I gave him my number. He shook my hand and said, "Whatever you do, be careful. She's really good at flipping the story." I walked out of that store with a whole new understanding of who I'd been dealing with. This wasn't some confused girl who didn't know how she felt. This was a system. I sat in my truck in the Walmart parking lot for a solid 10 minutes just staring. She didn't need time. She needed someone to install ceiling fans and pay for clutch replacements and feel just hopeful enough to keep showing up. Tyler had been me. So I went home and saved everything. Every text, every receipt, every screenshot. If she was going to flip the story, I was going to have the truth ready before she finished writing her version. Fiona went on the attack about 4 weeks after the friend text. First, she dropped a message in the group chat. Having one of those weeks where you find out who really has your back and who just disappears when they don't get what they want. Vague enough to seem general, specific enough that everyone knew. I didn't respond. 3 days later, she posted on Instagram. Picture of herself leaning against her Jetta, coffee in hand. Caption, "Rough month but still standing. So grateful for the people who show up when it matters and actually stay. You know who you are. My rock, my savior, real ones." Everyone in our circle knew who paid for that car. This wasn't gratitude. She was getting her version of the story out there before I could. No mention of a loan. No mention of a promise. Just vibes and thankfulness, and a version of events where nobody owed anybody anything. I left one comment. Glad the Jetta's running strong. Still working out that repayment plan for the $1,845 clutch job? No rush. Just want to make sure we're on the same page. Within 10 minutes, she deleted the entire post. My phone erupted. Dude, what? Wait, you paid for the car? Is this real? I didn't reply to any of them. Didn't need to. The comment had already been screenshotted by at least 3 people before she could take it down. That's the thing about the internet. 2 days later, 6:15 a.m. I walked out of the gym and found Fiona leaning against my truck in the parking lot, in the dark, in November, in Fargo. Nobody stands outside voluntarily in a North Dakota November, unless they're desperate or losing their mind. She started talking before I could get my keys out. "You need to stop telling people about the car. You're making me look horrible." I told her I'd mentioned it once, on a post where she was basically taking credit for having the car fixed. She tried the "I was just being grateful" angle. I told her she made it public first, and I just added context. Then she pivoted to saying she wasn't paying me back for something I volunteered to do. I leaned against the truck bed. "I have a text where you literally said, word for word, 'I will pay you back every cent, I promise.' Want me to read it out loud?" Her face changed. She stepped closer. "You did that because you were trying to buy your way into a relationship. And I'm not going to be punished because you caught feelings. Fiona, I texted you the cost. You agreed. That's a loan. Your feelings about my feelings don't change arithmetic." She dropped the sad act completely. "If you keep pushing this, I'm going to tell people things about you that will make your life really difficult." I mean it, Paul. I opened my truck door, got in, started the engine, and rolled the window down just enough. Make sure they're true, because I'm keeping records of everything, including this conversation. Drove away watching her get smaller in the rear view, hands in her pockets, standing in a gym parking lot at 6:20 in the morning because she thought a face-to-face threat would make me fold. Wrong guy. She came in hard after that. The first move was surgical. She'd taken my text about the cost and needing repayment and cropped it. Removed her reply entirely. The "yes, absolutely, I will pay you back every cent, I promise" part was gone. Sliced clean off. What was left made me look like a guy who paid unprompted and then started making financial demands. She circulated it to at least 4 people in our circle. Casey, Kelsey, a girl named Maddie who'd been Fiona's friend for years, and at least one other person I didn't know. My buddy Casey texted me first. Yo, man. Fiona showed me some texts, and honestly, it looks pretty bad. She said you've been holding the car thing over her head and threatening her about money. I asked him to send me exactly what she showed him. He screenshot it and sent it over. The cropped version. She hadn't just left out her reply. She'd cropped it where her text bubble started. I sent Casey the full unedited screenshot without a single word of commentary, just the image. His reply came 2 minutes later. Oh, wow, that's not what she showed me. Then, she's been showing people this version? I'm calling Kelsey right now. By the time it reached the outer edge of our friend group, the version going around was that I'd paid for the car unprompted and was demanding money because Fiona wouldn't date me. That's how far a cropped screenshot travels in 72 hours when someone knows how to aim it. Casey managed to correct the people he reached directly, forwarded the full screenshot to Kelsey and 3 other people that same night. But the damage was already spreading faster than Casey could chase it. Kelsey had already passed along the Paul's being weird about money version to people Casey didn't even know to contact. The cropped screenshot lie died quick with anyone who saw the full version, but the broader narrative Fiona was pushing still had legs in the wider circle. Round 1 was a draw. And Fiona wasn't done. Not even close. Next, she called Gary at Knutson's, told him the repair was unauthorized, and she wanted the charge reversed. Said I'd paid without her permission. You don't call a mechanic shop with a rehearsed story about unauthorized payments unless you've thought it through. Gary wasn't buying it. He told me she'd gotten aggressive when he wouldn't cooperate, and that she'd mentioned legal options, which made Gary laugh. I've been doing this for 22 years, he said. I know what a scam smells like. Here's what I didn't realize until later. Fiona knew my routines. Every single one. She knew what gym I went to, what time I went, about the Wednesday wings, even my job sites through mutual connections. I thought these encounters were random. They weren't. Wednesday night, wings and pool with Joe at our usual spot. Mid-conversation, the front door opened and Fiona walked in with 2 girls I'd never seen before. She scanned the room, made eye contact with me, held it for a solid 3 seconds, then walked her group to a table about 12 feet from ours, sat down facing me directly, and started talking. Not whispering, projecting. The way you do when you want to be overheard. She was telling them about a guy she'd been dealing with, how he was obsessed with her, how he'd paid for her car to try to buy her, and now he was harassing her about money. She kept glancing at me between details, checking, making sure I was hearing every word, pure performance. One of her friends leaned in and said, loud enough to carry, that's actually kind of scary. Have you called the police? And Fiona, without missing a beat, loud enough that the table behind us literally turned around, said, I'm honestly thinking about it. He's been showing up places and I don't feel safe. I'd been going to that spot every Wednesday for over a month. She knew that. She'd picked this place on this night on purpose. And the showing up places line was pure setup. She'd showed up at my gym parking lot 2 weeks ago. Now she was sitting in my regular spot telling strangers that I was the one following her. She wanted me to react, get loud, get in her face, give her the scene she could describe to a cop later. That's what this was. Bait. And every guy in this subreddit who's ever been falsely accused of anything knows exactly why I had to eat it. I did the opposite. Pulled out my phone, opened the voice recorder, pressed record, set it face up on the table between me and Joe, then went back to eating my wings. Didn't look at her, didn't say a word. Just let the recorder run and let her talk herself into whatever hole she was digging. She noticed about 2 minutes later. Mid-sentence, she trailed off. I could see her staring at my phone from my peripheral vision. The energy at her table shifted immediately. One of her friends leaned back in her chair. The other one started looking at the door. Fiona said something quiet I couldn't make out. The 2 girls exchanged a look that said, we did not sign up for this. They asked for the check before their food even came. Paid, and were out the door within 10 minutes of sitting down. The whole performance lasted less than 15 minutes. Fiona walked out last. Didn't look at me on the way out. First time all night. Joe watched them leave. She knew we'd be here. I know. She's building a paper trail, brother. Setting up a story she can use against you. I know that too. I took a sip of my drink and didn't look at her table. That's why I hit record. What I didn't tell Joe was that my hands were shaking under the table. Not from fear. From the realization that this girl was willing to stand up in a public place and call me dangerous just so she wouldn't have to pay me back. That's a whole different level. 3 days after the bar stunt, I pulled into a job site, a warehouse outside West Fargo, and there was a guy I didn't recognize leaning against a truck near the entrance. Big dude, arms crossed, Carhartt jacket. He straightened up when I got out and walked straight toward me. You Paul? Who's asking? I'm a friend of Fiona's. She's been telling me what you've been doing. Following her around, showing up at her apartment, threatening her over money. He stepped closer. I think you need to leave her alone. I looked at this guy. He was bigger than me by a solid 30 pounds. Genuinely angry, genuinely concerned. And I realized he wasn't the problem. He was just another person Fiona had fed her story to and aimed at me. I didn't argue, didn't explain. Just pulled out my phone, opened the screenshot, and turned the screen toward him. Full text exchange. My message about the cost. Her reply saying she'd pay back every cent. His eyes moved across it line by line. You could literally watch the anger drain out of his face and get replaced by something closer to, oh no. She agreed to pay you back? In writing. I put my phone away. You seem like a decent guy. Don't let her use you to fight battles, she started. He stood there about 10 seconds, then said, this is really messed up, man. I'm sorry. Got in his truck and left. I saved everything about that encounter. What he said, what he looked like, what time it happened. Added it to the pile. The pile was getting thick. The following week, Joe pulled me aside. Our supervisor, Mike, had gotten a phone call from a woman who didn't give her name. She said she was concerned about aggressive and threatening behavior from one of his field technicians. Described me specifically. Said I'd been showing up at her home uninvited and making financial threats. She was trying to get me fired. A woman who owed me $1,845, who agreed to pay it back in writing, picked up a phone, looked up my company's number, rehearsed a story, and tried to blow up my career. Because I had the nerve to ask for what was mine. Think about that for a second. She didn't just ignore the debt. She tried to take my job so I'd be too worried about my own bills to chase hers. That's not someone who feels bad about a misunderstanding. That's someone who thinks consequences are for other people. Mike called me into his office, closed the door, told me what the caller said, asked what was going on. I laid everything out, dropped it on his desk and let him read through it. Didn't say a word, just let the evidence speak for itself. Mike looked through it, leaned back and said, so she owes you money and she's trying to get you fired so you stop asking for it. That's the short version. He told me the company wasn't acting on an anonymous call with no evidence. Documented the conversation for my protection. Then he said something I didn't expect. Paul, I've seen guys come in here with excuses. You came in with a binder. People who are in the wrong don't do that. You're good. He shook my hand. After weeks of everyone looking at me sideways, having my own boss look at the evidence and tell me I was good, man, I needed that more than I realized. That night, I got everything in order. Then I texted Tyler and asked for those screenshots of Fiona running the same thing on him. He sent them within an hour. Same language, same framing, different victim. Sunday night. I sat at my kitchen table, opened the group chat, and typed one message, just facts. Hey everyone, I know there's been talk going around about me and Fiona, so I want to clear the air. In October, Fiona's car broke down before a job interview. I paid $1,845 for the repairs alone. She agreed in writing to pay me back. Since then, I've gotten cropped screenshots sent around to make me look bad, a stranger sent to confront me at my job, a call to my employer making false accusations, and an attempt to reverse the charge through the mechanic shop. I'm handling it through proper channels. Just didn't want the story to keep getting told without the actual facts. Attach the full, unedited text exchange. Her agreement visible. Then I muted the chat and put my phone in a drawer. Joe filled me in the next morning. The chat went nuclear. People who'd been quietly buying Fiona's version suddenly had the full picture. The employer call detail was what flipped everyone. That crossed a line even the people on the fence couldn't ignore. Casey jumped in unprompted and told the group the texts Fiona had been showing people were cropped. Kelsey, who'd been one of the people spreading the Paul's being weird about money line before Casey had corrected her, went quiet for about an hour and then texted Joe, I feel really gross right now. I didn't realize how bad this actually was. I owe Paul an apology. 2 other guys in the group reached out to Joe privately too. One of them had been the guy who told me a few weeks earlier that I was taking it too far and needed to just let it go. He said he felt like an idiot. Turns out when you only hear one side of the story, you make one-sided judgments. Funny how that works. Fiona didn't respond in the chat. Not one word. Dead quiet. When someone's been running their mouth for weeks and then suddenly has nothing to say the second receipts come out, people notice. You don't have to call someone a liar. The silence does it for you. But she wasn't done with me privately. She texted me 20 minutes after I posted. I cannot believe you just did that. You humiliated me in front of everyone. That was supposed to be between us. I didn't respond. You know I'm going through a hard time right now. You know I can't just come up with that kind of money. This is so unfair. Didn't respond to that either. If you keep pushing this, I'm going to make sure people will see a very different side of you. Screenshotted the whole string. Printed everything the next day. Drafted a demand letter with Joe's help. Joe's uncle is a retired paralegal, so Joe knew the basics. Here's what you owe. Here's the proof. You've got 30 days to pay, or I'm taking you to court. Sent it certified mail. Return receipt requested. The kind of letter that shows up in a green-bordered envelope and makes your stomach drop when you see it in the mailbox. Green card came back signed 6 days later. She'd accepted delivery. The clock started ticking. 2 weeks of silence. Then Maddie called, Fiona's friend, the one she'd sent the cropped screenshot to. And her tone was completely different from anything I'd heard from that side of the fence. Paul, I need to tell you something. I should have said this sooner. After I'd posted the receipts, Fiona had called Maddie in a full rage, screaming, not sad crying, angry crying. And during that call, Fiona said, he was never going to be my boyfriend. I just needed him around until I got settled. And now he's ruining everything because he can't take a hint? Maddie had the call on speaker. Her roommate heard every word. But that wasn't all. Maddie had been saving texts from Fiona for weeks because they'd started making her uncomfortable. She read some of them to me. Paul's so easy to manage. You just tell him he's amazing, and he does whatever you want. I knew he'd pay for the car. He's been trying to date me for months. Might as well let him be useful. He's not boyfriend material, but he fixes everything. So why would I say no, LOL? Read that last one again. Why would I say no? Like I was a coupon she found in her mailbox? Maddie sent me screenshots of all of it. Then she said, I've known Fiona for 3 years, and I always made excuses for her. But after that phone call and these texts, I can't anymore. She knew what she was doing to you. She told me she knew. And she thought it was funny. She offered to write a statement if I ever needed one. I told her I appreciated it. Most people would have just minded their own business. She didn't. I sat at my kitchen table after that call, and everything clicked. She hadn't been confused about my feelings. She'd been managing them, like a subscription she could cancel whenever she wanted. Every compliment, every late-night text, every time she leaned into me just enough to keep me hooked, all of it was calculated. And the car. That wasn't some confused girl accepting help from a friend. That was a woman who knew a guy was in love with her and decided to cash in the biggest chip on the table before letting him know the game was rigged. The thing that hit me hardest wasn't the money. She'd looked at a guy who drove across Fargo at 5 a.m. because she was crying, who emptied his savings so she wouldn't miss an interview, and her honest assessment was that I was useful. Just useful. 30 days came and went. No payment. Not even a text saying she needed more time. Nothing. Radio silence. Like the letter never existed. Which was fine by me because silence after a demand letter is basically a signed permission slip to file. I filed in small claims. Cass County District Court. $1,845 plus filing fee. Had her served at her apartment on a Tuesday. Date set for early February. In the weeks before the hearing, Fiona went completely quiet. I got my case together, printed everything out, had it all ready to go. Small claims is nothing like TV. No jury, no cross-examinations, no dramatic objections, just a judge in a small room with fluorescent lights and about 15 minutes of your life. I kept it short. Car broke down. I paid. Before I paid, I texted her the amount and said I needed repayment. She agreed in writing, showed the judge the texts, the receipt, my bank statement, the demand letter, the signed return receipt. Laid it all out quick and clean. The judge turned to Fiona. Ma'am, your response? She was dressed up, hair done, like looking good was going to matter more than the receipts. Your Honor, this was a gift. He offered to pay because he was interested in me romantically, and I turned him down and now he's retaliating. The judge picked up the text printout, read it out loud. I can cover it up front, but I need you to pay me back. And you responded, yes, I will pay you back every cent, I promise. He looked at her over his glasses. Where's the gift language here? He was trying to impress me. It was implied, I'm looking at a written agreement to repay. Did you make any payments toward this amount? No, but partial payments? Any documented attempt to arrange a payment plan? No. The judge leaned back, looked at her for a long second, then looked at me, then wrote something down. Whole thing took less than 10 minutes. Ruled in my favor? Full amount, $1,845 plus filing fee, 30 days to pay. She walked out without a word, didn't look at me, didn't look at anyone, just grabbed her coat off the back of the chair and went straight for the door like the building was on fire. Joe was on a bench by the door. Well, full amount, plus filing costs. He clapped me on the shoulder. We walked out into the February cold. Sun was actually out for once, which in a Fargo February feels like the universe giving you a nod. My phone buzzed on the way to the truck. Fiona, I hope you're happy. You ruined a friendship over money. I typed back. Yes, 30 days. She paid. Not on time, but she paid. 26 days after the ruling. Bank transfer. Full amount plus costs. No message, no apology. Just the money appearing in my account on a random morning while I was elbow deep in a conveyor motor replacement. Deposited it, rebuilt the tool fund, saved all the evidence until the judgment fully cleared, then deleted her number, her photos, and every text thread. Clean break. Last I heard, she got the hospitality job in Minneapolis and moved down there. New city, new people, fresh start. Good for her. I hope she finds what she's looking for, and I hope whoever she finds it from keeps his receipts. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true. After I caught my wife and my dad sleeping together, they told me, yeah, we love each other. Keep the marriage going. So things stay stable, you'll adapt. So I adapted and exposed their affair to the entire family and took them both to court. Hey Reddit, thought my life was solid. Good job, good marriage, good family. Then I came home early one day and found out just how wrong I was. Before things completely blew up, let me start from the beginning. I'm Isaac, 34. I'm an industrial design consultant. We work on prototypes for manufacturing clients. Assembly line components, safety gear, custom tooling, the kind of stuff nobody notices until it breaks. Good money, steady work. Boring as hell, according to my wife Vanessa. She'd been telling me that for months. You're so stable, it's suffocating. You never take risks. You're satisfied with good enough. She always said it like she was performing for someone. Usually her best friend Betty, who would nod and say, "Girl, you deserve more." A real man leads. Betty was a leech, one of those people who turns life into content, constantly narrating everything for imaginary followers. And Vanessa absorbed every word like gospel. Still, I tried. I stopped at her favorite Thai spot and picked up her usual extra crispy noodles in the pad CU, thinking maybe we'd have lunch on the back patio like we used to, before our marriage became something she wanted to upgrade. I pulled into the driveway around 11:30 and froze. My dad's car was parked 4 houses down, not in front of our home, just far enough away that he thought he was being subtle. I recognized it instantly. He'd just had it detailed and wouldn't shut up about the ceramic coating. Showroom glossy, but the engine was cold. He'd been there a while. My dad had always been around. Too around. Fixing things I didn't ask him to touch. Showing up uninvited. Getting oddly possessive over little moments. Once he watched our son, Owen, playing in the yard and said, "The kid's got my eyes," with a tone that made me uncomfortable. I'd brushed it off at the time. But standing there, looking at his car, that same crawling wrongness returned. Inside, the door was unlocked. The TV was on, volume barely audible. 2 coffee mugs sat on the table, one with Vanessa's lipstick, one untouched. Something in me went very, very still. I set the food on the counter without calling out. Something in my body knew better. As I walked toward the stairs, I heard voices. Hers first, soft and breathy, followed by a low murmur I recognized instantly. My dad's voice. My heartbeat pounded in my throat. I told myself there was an innocent explanation. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. Then I heard a sound from Vanessa, a soft, breathy laugh she only made when kissing. My hand moved before my brain did. I pushed the bedroom door open, and the world dropped out from under me. They weren't just sitting close. My dad was half on top of her, one hand on her waist, her fingers tangled in his hair. Their mouths were on each other, slow, familiar. A kiss that was not new, a kiss that came from practice. They jerked apart as the door slammed against the wall. Vanessa scrambled upright, hair messy, cheeks flushed. My dad, on the other hand, moved with irritating calm, like I'd interrupted something he believed he had the right to be doing. He didn't look guilty. He looked annoyed. He stood a little straighter, buttoning the top of his shirt, and said, "We need to sit down." Not, "Oh my God," not "this isn't what it looks like." Just a command, like this was a meeting he'd scheduled. I said nothing, just walked downstairs, every step echoing like it belonged to someone else. They followed, silent. At the dining table, I sat on one side. They sat together on the other, as if presenting a joint statement. Vanessa started with a trembling voice. "What you saw, I didn't want it to happen like that. There's history. Your dad and I, we knew each other before we met. We got close again, and..." I cut in. "Are you sleeping together?" My dad answered instantly. "It's more than that. We're in love." Something in my chest cracked. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a clean split. Vanessa added quickly, like she could soften the blow. "We didn't want to hurt you." Intent as a shield. She always did that. My dad leaned forward, the project manager of this disaster. "We can handle this as adults. We stay married legally, but separate our personal lives. It avoids a messy divorce, maintains stability for Owen, keeps the peace." He even smiled, like he'd solved something instead of detonating it. You'd be free to date, he continued. She'd move out eventually. We'd keep everything private. There doesn't need to be scandal or drama. Vanessa nodded like this was reasonable. That's when I understood. He genuinely believed he could manage this. Like a family schedule, like a broken fence, like a problem that needed his intervention. He'd controlled my mother for 18 years. He'd hovered over my life ever since. And now he thought he could control this too. I stood, looked him dead in the eye, and said, I'm not part of your solution. I'm the problem you caused. Then I walked out of my own house before I did something I couldn't undo. I ended up at a park 6 blocks away. Sat on a bench watching people walk dogs and push strollers, living normal lives while mine burned. Had it been happening before the wedding? During? After? Was I ever anything but a placeholder while they continued whatever they'd started long before me? And then the thought that had been stalking me finally caught up. Owen, 3 years old. My dad always around him, always volunteering to babysit, always showing up when I wasn't home. The kids got my eyes. The world tilted. I shoved the thought down, breathing through the panic. By 4, I was at my buddy Lucas's place. Told him everything. He listened without interrupting, jaw tight, then said we needed to start documenting. I needed a lawyer. I needed to protect myself before they rewrote the story. Lucas worked in risk management. He thought in terms of threats and mitigation. Right then, that was exactly what I needed. I spent the night on his couch, eyes open, replaying every memory I'd ignored. The next morning, I called my mom. Told her I needed 20 minutes. It was about Dad. At her house, I told her everything. She went pale, then furious. Said he'd cheated on her and now on me. Said she was calling him right then. I stopped her. Told her reacting now would only give him ammunition. That he'd paint me as unstable. That I wouldn't let him control the narrative again. She asked what I needed from her. No carrying messages, no negotiating. If anyone asks, send them to me. And if Dad shows up, don't let him in. Then I told her the truth. Neither of us wanted to say aloud. He doesn't feel guilty, Mom. He feels inconvenienced. Her face hardened with recognition. Before I left, she apologized for not protecting me from him. I told her it wasn't her job anymore. This time, I was protecting myself. Over the next week, Vanessa and my dad kept reaching out. Long messages about how we needed to talk, how they understood I was hurt, how family could get through anything if we stayed mature. I didn't respond. Saved everything. Screenshots, timestamps, forwarded it all to Lucas. Lucas came through with a lawyer, Patterson, a family law shark with a reputation for hitting hard when needed. We met Friday. I brought everything. Timeline, messages, the whole mess. Patterson skimmed it and said 2 things. 1, the house was mine. I'd bought it before the marriage and the prenup protected it. 2, I needed a paternity test. That second part felt like a punch to the ribs. I'd been avoiding the thought, telling myself I was paranoid, but Patterson laid it out plainly. The timeline, my dad's behavior, the strange comments, the way he hovered around Owen. He said I needed certainty. I went back to Lucas's place that night and barely slept. Kept replaying every moment with Owen. 3 years old. Loved trains and dinosaurs. Called me Dada. Looked at me like I hung the moon. The way he'd grab my hand crossing the street or fall asleep on my chest during movies. 1,000 small moments that felt real because they were, at least on my side. The kids got my eyes. Next morning, I took Owen to a pediatric clinic, told Vanessa it was a routine checkup, got a DNA sample, and sent it to a lab Patterson trusted. Paid extra for rush processing, sent a second sample to another lab, just in case. Meanwhile, Vanessa was posting nonstop. New beginnings, living my truth. Strong women don't apologize for wanting more. Betty was glued to the comments hyping her up. You're glowing. This is your season. Real ones know. Made me want to throw my phone. I saved every post. 8 days later, Patterson called. No softening, no easing into it. Owen wasn't mine. 0.0% probability. The second lab confirmed it 2 days later. I sat in my car in the office parking lot, staring at the paperwork until my knuckles went white against the steering wheel, processing the fact that my dad hadn't just betrayed me, he'd tried to replace me. I'd spent 3 years raising his son, thinking he was mine. Diapers, midnight feedings, first steps, every moment built on a lie. I drove to an empty park and sat on a bench until the sky went dark. Thought about Owen's first word, Dada. Thought about teaching him to stack blocks. How he'd grab my finger when he was learning to walk. All of it felt real. None of it was. For an hour, I let myself feel it. The loss, the theft, the violation of having 3 years of fatherhood ripped out from under me by 2 people who watched me live the lie they created. Then I called Lucas, told him everything. He went silent for a long moment, then said we needed to meet, that I shouldn't be alone. We met at a diner. Neutral ground. Lucas asked what I wanted to do. I told him everything. Paternity fraud, divorce, Full scorched earth. I was done being quiet. He told me to take one night to be absolutely sure, because once I started this, there was no going back. I told him I'd been sure since the moment I opened that bedroom door. They'd made their choice. Now I was making mine. But first, I needed to look Vanessa in the eye and tell her I knew. That night, I texted her, said I'd come by the next day to grab a few things and talk. She responded immediately. She'd been hoping I'd reach out. She missed me. Maybe we could work something out. I didn't reply. The next afternoon, Lucas came with me. Vanessa answered the door looking like she'd been preparing for a reunion. Hair done, makeup perfect, smile ready. She asked if we could talk alone. I said Lucas was staying. This wasn't that kind of conversation. We sat in the living room. Owen was at daycare. I didn't want him anywhere near this. I told her the DNA results were back. Told her I knew Owen wasn't mine. Told her I knew exactly who his real father was. Her face drained to white. Then she started talking fast. Too fast. She could explain. It wasn't what I thought. We could fix this. And then she said it. I couldn't tell anyone. That stopped me cold. You're not scared of losing me? You're scared people will know. She opened her mouth, closed it again. Nothing. I stood. Told her my lawyer would be in touch. She had 30 days to move out of my house. If anything was missing or damaged, I'd pursue it. She started crying. Said she never meant for it to happen like this. That she still cared about me. I told her I didn't care. Her feelings now weren't my problem. She'd made her choices. Now she'd live with them. Lucas and I left. No words in the car. None needed. That night I called Patterson and told him to file everything. Divorce, paternity fraud, removal from the birth certificate, the works. He warned it would get messy. Vanessa would fight. My dad might interfere. I told him I didn't care how messy it got. I wasn't the one who lied for 3 years. Patterson said he'd have the documents ready by the end of the week. The first person to crack wasn't Vanessa. It was Betty. 2 days after I told Vanessa I knew about Owen, Betty showed up at my mom's house. No idea how she got the address. Don't care. She knocked at 8 in the morning wearing this mask of concern, saying she wanted to check on me, that Vanessa was worried, that maybe we could all sit down and talk. My mom called me immediately, asked if I wanted her to handle it. I said yes. She went back outside and told Betty to leave. Said this was family business and Betty wasn't family. If she came back, it would be harassment. Betty tried the sympathy act. Vanessa was struggling. Everyone made mistakes. She was just trying to help. My mom said Vanessa could struggle with her choices on her own time. Betty needed to step off the property. Betty left, but an hour later she posted a vague status about toxic families, grudges, and supporting your friends. I screenshotted it. Saved it. Meanwhile, Vanessa had dropped the curated perfect wife act and shifted into rant mode. Betrayal, growth, standing in your truth, all while Betty cheered her on from the comments. Own your story. They can't handle your power. Real ones stand with you. Lucas pointed out every post was evidence. Patterson said he'd already started documenting her entire feed. Then my dad tried his own angle, showed up at my office. Reception called to say my father was in the lobby. I told them to send him away. I don't have a father. An hour later, he emailed. Long, rambling nonsense about how he never meant to hurt me, how feelings aren't convenient, how we were still blood. I forwarded it to Patterson without replying. The next morning, the divorce papers were served to Vanessa. Certified mail, formal, clean. Patterson included everything. Adultery, paternity fraud, notice to vacate within 30 days. He attached the deed showing I was the sole owner and the prenup defining all premarital assets as separate. She called me 16 times, 11 voicemails, each more frantic than the last. You can't do this. My lawyer says this isn't legal. You're destroying our family. I didn't answer. Saved it all. That night, my cousin Julie called. She and I had always been close. She said the family grapevine was going nuts and wanted to make sure I was okay. I gave her the short version. She said if I needed anything, she was there. 3 days later, everything shifted. One of Betty's friends from their group chat, a woman I'd never even met, messaged Lucas through a mutual acquaintance. She'd been in the chat when Betty accidentally posted a screenshot of their strategy session. Said Betty deleted it within minutes, but she'd grabbed it first because it felt wrong. She sent Lucas the full image. The screenshot was exactly what I imagined. Betty and Vanessa planning how to spin everything. What to post, who to contact, how to paint me unstable. Betty wrote, "Get ahead of this. Post about emotional abuse, plant seeds." Vanessa asked, "What about the paternity thing?" And Betty replied, "That doesn't go public. Ever. Keep it vague." Lucas sent it to me. Then to Patterson. Patterson called within an hour. "This is gold," he said. "Proof of coordination, deceit, manipulation, ammunition for every hearing." Betty didn't know we had it. She was still in the comments under Vanessa's posts, acting like the loyal best friend. Patterson waited almost a week before moving. Let Betty keep chirping. Then he sent her lawyer a letter. Not about the screenshot, just a polite summary of her potential civil liability, interference with marriage, coaching deception, possible subpoena. The next day, Betty's lawyer called Patterson. Betty wanted to cooperate. She'd provide chats, timelines, everything. Over the next few days, her lawyer sent over her cooperation statement, Betty claiming Vanessa manipulated her, that she'd tried to talk Vanessa out of the affair, that she'd only wanted to support her friend. Once Patterson had her story in writing, he sent her lawyer the screenshot we'd been holding the entire time. Silence. Long silence. Then a defeated, "We'll revise." The next day, a new statement arrived. This time, honest. Yes, she'd known. Yes, she'd strategized. Yes, she'd coached Vanessa on how to manage optics and hide the paternity issue. The full flip took nearly 2 weeks, but watching her scramble was worth it. I told Patterson to keep everything. Betty had never cared about Vanessa or me, just herself. Meanwhile, Vanessa posted a polished growth statement. Mistakes, healing, protecting her son, choosing peace, no specifics, no accountability. I didn't respond publicly. Instead, I wrote one simple paragraph and sent it to key family members. Vanessa admitted to an affair with my father. Paternity testing confirmed Owen is not my son. Divorce proceedings are underway. Please direct questions to my attorney. I sent it to my mom, my aunt, my uncle, a few cousins. Then I turned my phone off and went to the gym. Lucas texted later. Mom had told the family calmly, directly. The response was overwhelmingly in my favor. My dad had already been uninvited from multiple gatherings, but not everyone was ready to face it. 2 days later, my Uncle Rich, my dad's younger brother, showed up at my office. Wanted to talk. I let him in. He sat down and launched into a speech about keeping family matters private, about forgiveness, about how I was tearing the family apart. He said my mom was being harsh and I needed to show maturity. I let him finish. Then I stood, walked to the door and opened it. Privacy protected them. I'm done protecting them. He tried to add something about me being too young to understand complexity. I just held the door open, waiting. He left. That weekend, Vanessa tried one last angle. She showed up at Lucas's place where I'd been staying. Bangs on the door, crying. Said Betty fed her bad advice. Said she wanted to fix things. Lucas opened the door, looked at her, and said, "We're discussing paternity fraud and adultery, not feelings." Then he closed the door in her face. She stayed outside crying for 10 minutes before leaving. "She's not remorseful," Lucas said. "She's losing." He was right. By the end of the month, Vanessa had moved out. Took clothes, some furniture. Didn't trash the place. I changed the locks that night. Patterson told me our first hearing would be within 8 weeks. Vanessa's lawyer was already pushing for alimony and child support and planning to contest paternity. I told him to use everything we had. Vanessa's lawyer tried to get the paternity results tossed, claimed I'd obtained them without proper consent, argued that Owen deserved stability, that removing me as his legal father would harm him. Patterson dismantled it. He showed the samples were obtained legally and that Vanessa had committed fraud. 3 years of knowing the truth and hiding it. He argued Owen's right to know his biological father outweighed any stability built on deception. The judge agreed and ordered a second court-mandated test. Same result, 0% paternity. But things didn't end there. The judge raised the issue of equitable estoppel because I'd acted as Owen's father for 3 years. She needed to determine whether my legal obligation should continue despite biology. Both sides were ordered to brief the issue. Patterson argued fraud voids estoppel. I'd been deceived from day one. He included everything. The affair timeline, Vanessa's messages with my dad, the Betty coordination proving she'd actively maintained the lie. Vanessa's lawyer argued I'd bonded with Owen, that the child's interest came first. The hearing lasted 2 hours. Patterson was relentless. He showed how Vanessa had deliberately hidden the truth, how every memory I'd built with Owen was manufactured under false pretenses, and how Vanessa hadn't confessed. She'd been caught. A week later, the judge ruled. My name was removed from the birth certificate. My legal obligation ended. She made it clear the ruling was narrow and based entirely on Vanessa's fraud. Had I known earlier, or had Vanessa been honest, the outcome might have been different. Vanessa still tried to argue for support, claimed I'd acted as father for 3 years, that Owen knew me as dad. Patterson hit her with everything. The adultery, the deception, the paternity cover-up, the Betty group chat. The judge didn't buy a word of it. Told Vanessa she'd created the situation. I owed nothing to a child who wasn't mine and whom she'd lied about. Vanessa cried in court, but the judge dealt in facts, not tears. My dad didn't show up to a single hearing. Stayed away. Let her sink alone. A week later, he tried a new angle. His lawyer sent Patterson a settlement offer, $25,000 in exchange for a signed NDA. I wouldn't discuss the affair or the fraud, wouldn't speak to family, wouldn't pursue anything further. Complete silence for cash. Patterson read it to me, asked if I wanted to consider it. I laughed. Respond with one sentence, "The truth isn't for sale." Patterson said the offer now became evidence of guilt. If my dad tried anything else, we'd use it. Meanwhile, my mom had been steady and matter-of-fact with the family. No dramatics, just the truth. He cheated on me, gaslit me, and now he's done it to his own son. Same pattern, same man. People believed her. They'd seen him do it before. My aunt ran into him at a grocery store. She told him he wasn't welcome at family events anymore and that what he'd done was unforgivable. He tried explaining, talking about how feelings are complicated. She cut him off. There's nothing complicated about sleeping with your son's wife and letting him raise your child. You're a coward. Then she walked away. Within 2 weeks, he was uninvited from every family gathering for the rest of the year. Holidays, birthdays, everything. But he wasn't done. He tried one more thing, and this is when I finally saw the full shape of who he was. He called one of my clients, a manufacturing VP I'd worked with for 2 years, told him he was concerned about my mental state, that I was under stress, that it might affect my work. The client found it strange and called me directly. I kept my voice calm, told him my father and I were estranged due to personal matters I wouldn't discuss professionally, that my work spoke for itself. He apologized, said he'd had no concerns, that the call had felt off. We ended the conversation fine, but I sat there stunned. This wasn't desperation. This was control. My dad had always operated the same way, hovering, inserting himself where he wasn't needed, managing everything around him. He'd controlled my mom for years. He'd tried controlling me my whole life. And once that stopped working, he shifted to undermining whatever I'd built without him. I called Patterson. He said this went beyond family drama, that it was tortious interference. I told him to send a cease and desist immediately, making it clear that any further attempt to contact my employer or clients would trigger legal action. Patterson drafted it that afternoon. My dad didn't try again. Meanwhile, Vanessa's online persona continued collapsing. Gone was the curated perfection. Now it was posts about struggle, single motherhood, adversity. Betty was still in her comments, cheering her on, but the engagement had tanked. People were catching on. Betty attempted her own cleanup. Posts about loyalty, supporting friends, how she didn't deserve the hate. Nobody bought it. Comments tore into her for manipulating the situation and making everything worse. She locked her account within a week. 7 months after I'd filed, the divorce was finalized. It had dragged on because Vanessa kept contesting details and her lawyer kept filing pointless motions, trying to buy her time in my house. Patterson shut each one down with the prenup and documentation. In the end, she got nothing from the house. Nothing in alimony. Nothing except the consequences she'd earned. After the divorce, my dad tried reaching out one last time. Sent a letter saying he knew I was angry, but hoped we could talk someday. That he'd never stopped being my father. That blood was thicker than mistakes. I read it once, then burned it. I sent one text. You stopped being my father when you slept with my wife. Blood means nothing when it's poisoned. Then I blocked his number, his email, every avenue of contact. Lucas asked me once if I felt guilty for cutting him off completely. I said no. Guilt requires caring. And I didn't care anymore. He'd made his choice knowing exactly what it would cost. Several months after the divorce was finalized, I started seeing someone. Her name was Rachel. Met her through work. She was a project manager for one of our manufacturing clients. Smart. Funny. No social media presence. No drama. A normal person living a normal life. We took it slow. She knew I was divorced, but I didn't dump the whole story on her right away. When I finally told her, she nodded. Said everyone had baggage. Asked if I was still angry. I told her I'd moved past that. That I'd had good people around me. Lucas, my mom. A lawyer who gave a damn. We kept dating. Things got serious. She met Lucas. Met my mom. Everyone liked her. Meanwhile, Julie kept me updated on my dad without me asking. Said he'd moved west to Colorado. Trying to start over somewhere nobody knew him. I'd settled into a routine. Work was good. Got promoted to senior consultant. Pay raise. Better projects. But Owen stayed with me in ways I didn't expect. I'd see kids his age at the park, and my chest would tighten. I'd hear a kid call out Dada in a store and turn around before remembering. Some nights I'd lie awake thinking about his 3rd birthday party. How he'd laughed when I'd pretended to be a dinosaur. How he'd hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. I didn't talk about it much. Lucas knew. Rachel figured it out eventually. She asked once if I'd ever want to see Owen again. I said I didn't know. That the kid deserved better than being caught between his mother's lies and my grief. That maybe someday when he was older and could understand. But not now. Rachel and I moved in together after dating for most of a year. My house. She loved it. Said it felt peaceful. We painted the living room together, replaced furniture piece by piece, made it ours instead of mine. We hosted a dinner party that winter. Small gathering. My mom, Lucas, a few friends from work, Rachel's sister. Good food, normal conversation. My mom pulled me aside while Rachel was in the kitchen, told me I looked happy. I was. By the following spring, I proposed to Rachel. Nothing fancy. Us at home on the patio. She said yes. We set a date for the next year. But before the wedding, something pulled me back into their world one last time. A few months after we got engaged, Vanessa reached out. Not through text or social media, through Patterson. Her lawyer contacted him asking if I'd be willing to meet. Said Vanessa wanted closure. Patterson asked if I wanted to respond. I said no, that I'd moved on. He told her lawyer. They pushed back, said Vanessa was struggling, that it would be good for everyone to have a conversation. Patterson said no again, firmly. Her lawyer tried once more. Said my dad wanted to be part of the conversation too, that they both needed this. That changed things. Not because I wanted closure, because I wanted to make sure they understood exactly where things stood. I told Patterson to set it up. One meeting, neutral location, Lucas present. They got 30 minutes, not a second more. But before that meeting, Vanessa tried something else. She found Rachel on social media and sent her a message. Long thing about how I'd been through trauma, how I might have painted Vanessa unfairly, how Rachel should know the full story. Rachel showed me the message immediately, asked if I wanted her to respond. I told her no, that Vanessa was desperate, that the best response was no response. Rachel blocked her, then said, we should probably hear whatever they wanted to say. Close the door completely. I agreed. Called Patterson and confirmed the meeting. Patterson arranged it for a Saturday afternoon a couple weeks later. Conference room at his office. Vanessa, my dad, their lawyers, me, Lucas, Patterson. I walked in at exactly 2. Vanessa looked different. Hair shorter, no makeup, dressed casual. She looked tired, like life had ground her down. My dad looked older, grayer, thinner, like guilt or whatever he was capable of feeling had finally caught up. We sat. Patterson laid out ground rules. This was not negotiation, not counseling. A courtesy meeting I'd agreed to. They had 30 minutes to say whatever they wanted. Then we'd never speak again. Vanessa went first. Said she'd been working on herself, that she'd realized how much she'd hurt me, that she couldn't change the past but wanted me to know she was sorry, that she hoped I'd found peace. I didn't respond. Listened. My dad went next. Said he'd made terrible choices, that he'd betrayed me in the worst way, that he understood if I never forgave him, that he carried it with him every day. Again, I didn't respond. Waited. They both looked at me, waiting for something. Forgiveness, maybe. Understanding. Some sign that their apologies mattered. I looked at both of them, took my time, then I spoke. I'm not here for closure. I had closure the day the divorce finalized. I'm here to make sure you both understand something. Vanessa, you didn't cheat. You committed paternity fraud. For 3 years, I raised a child I believed was mine. Changed diapers, walked the floor at night, taught him to walk, read him stories, loved him, all while you knew the truth. All while you let me live in a lie. You didn't do that because you were confused. You did it because it was convenient. Because having a stable husband who didn't ask questions was easier than facing what you'd done. Vanessa opened her mouth, but I kept going. And you didn't confess. You got caught. If I hadn't come home early that day, you'd still be lying. Still letting me raise his son. Still treating our marriage like performance art while you ran your real relationship behind the scene. Your apology means nothing. You're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you lost your comfortable life. I turned to my dad. And you didn't betray me. You tried to replace me. You slept with my wife, fathered her child, then watched me raise him for 3 years without saying a word. You stood in my house, played grandfather to your own son, gave me advice about parenting, about marriage, all while knowing you'd destroyed both. You even tried to sabotage my career when things fell apart, called my client to plant doubt about my mental state. Because that's what you do. You control. You manage. You insert yourself into everything. And when someone steps outside your control, you try to tear them down. My dad flinched at that. Guess he didn't think I knew. You talk about carrying it with you every day. You should. Because I carried it for months. The confusion. The betrayal. The question of whether anything in my life had ever been real. You put that weight on me. Now you get to carry your own. My dad looked down. I stood up. Looked at both of them. I'm not angry anymore. I'm done. You both made your choices knowing what they'd cost. You chose each other over honesty. Over me. That's your right. But don't expect me to help you feel better about it. I don't forgive you. I don't hate you. I don't care. You're strangers who happen to share my history. Owen's not my son. That's biology. But losing him wasn't easy. I spent months thinking about him, missing bedtime routine, hearing his voice in my head, mourning what I thought we had. That grief doesn't change the reality you created. He's your responsibility. Yours to raise. Yours to explain to when he's old enough to ask questions. Vanessa started crying. My dad stared at the table. One more thing. If either of you contact me again, I'll pursue harassment charges. If you show up at my house, I'll call the cops. If you try to involve mutual friends or family, I'll get a restraining order. This is the last time we speak. Ever. I looked at Patterson. We're done here. Then I walked out. Lucas followed. Lucas. We drove back in silence. Rachel was waiting. Asked how it went. I told her I'd made it clear where things stood. That it was over. She said I'd done the right thing. Lucas texted later. Said they'd looked shell-shocked. I slept better that night. Not because of revenge, because of finality. Next morning, my mom called. I walked her through it. She said I'd handled it perfectly. The next few months moved fast. Wedding planning, work projects, life filling in the spaces their absence had left. About a year and a half after that meeting, Julie called me. Said Vanessa and my dad had imploded. Vanessa wanted marriage. My dad said no. They'd split messy in public. Vanessa posted about it. Betty showed back up briefly, and Vanessa turned on her too. Posted old messages. Betty's reputation destroyed locally. My dad had moved again. Arizona this time. Another fresh start. Julie asked if I wanted details. I said no. That it was exactly what I expected. That people who build relationships on lies eventually turn on each other. A month later, Rachel and I got married. The wedding happened on a Saturday in April. Small venue, 50 people. My mom walked me down the aisle. Rachel looked beautiful. Simple dress. Being herself. We said our vows. Short. Honest. Promises we planned to keep. Then we kissed and everyone cheered. At the reception, my mom gave a toast. Said I'd faced betrayal and chose growth. That she'd never been more proud. Lucas gave a toast too. Said I'd shown him what real strength looked like. That he was honored to stand with me. I stood up to thank everyone. Looked around the room at the people who'd shown up. People who'd earned their place through actions, not biology. I said family isn't about blood. It's about showing up. About choosing each other every day even when it's hard. I'm standing here because I learned to walk away from people who saw me as convenient. Because I stopped trying to make liars comfortable and started building something real. Thank you for being the family I got to choose. For proving that the best revenge isn't making people suffer. It's being happy without them. Everyone raised their glasses. Rachel kissed me. We celebrated. That night at the hotel, Rachel asked if I'd thought about them at all today. I told her the truth. Not once. 4 years ago, I'd walked into my bedroom and found my wife and my father together. Found out the child I'd been raising wasn't mine. Found out everything was built on lies. Now I was married to Rachel, living in a house we'd made ours together, surrounded by people who'd earned their place through loyalty, not manipulation. Vanessa and my dad had tried to break me, tried to make me accept their version of reality. They'd failed, not because I'd fought back viciously, because I'd walked away and built something better. They had their choices, I had mine, and mine were infinitely better. The end. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.